Hi everyone, I'm Greet from Book Island, and I'm joined today by Jayde Perkin, the author and illustrator of Mum's Jumper. I'm sure you know the story, but if you don't, this is the story of a little girl who loses her mum and then goes through grief. Mum's Jumper has struck a chord with many readers, young and old, all around the world. And it was only published 9 months ago. Meanwhile, the American edition was released, Mum's Sweater, and soon there will be a Taiwanese edition as well, and I hope many more languages will follow. Our chat today is part of the Empathy Lab celebrations for Empathy Day, which was yesterday, but Empathy Day is every day, so we could have done it next week as well. Empathy Day is one of the many initiatives run by Empathy Lab, which is a charity run by Miranda McKerney. She's a driving force behind it. And she strongly believes that it's time for an empathy revolution. I'm on the same page. I think this is the right time to change things. And research has shown that empathy can be instilled through reading. We already knew that, but it's now proven, and we're really proud and grateful that Mum's Jumper was chosen by Empathy Lab for the empathy collection, Read for Empathy collections for the primary schools, and because it was actually my aim and dream to have Empathy Lab in all the primary schools in the UK within 3 years, and also in the public libraries. And thanks to Empathy Lab and also the reading agency with their Reading Well list, that goal is nearly achieved. So today, for Empathy Day or Empathy Week, Jayde and I have invited our followers to send in some questions that they had about Mum's Jumper, about grief, about empathy, and Jayde will answer them. But first, I would like to tell you how Jayde and I met and how Mum's Jumper came about. So, nearly 4 years ago, I met a young mum here in Bristol who sadly was going to die. She was terminally ill, and she asked me if I could help her find a good picture book that would help her to tell her daughter she didn't have much longer to live. And I was really shocked when she told me, and I couldn't really help her, but because we only had 2 books about grief, Fox and Goldfish, which was not really suitable, and Maya and What Matters. So after I met her, I carried that story with me until the day I started seeing Jayde's artwork popping up in my Instagram feed. And Jayde had written quite a few zines and comics about her own experiences with grief. So this is Breathe in Deep and Time May Change Me. Now, I was really lucky. I'm really lucky to be living in Bristol because that's where Jayde lives as well. And one day I ran into her at the Bristol Comics and Zine Fair, where she had all her artwork and where I could finally read those comics. And I immediately knew that Jayde could tell the story that the mum had been looking for. So we sat down, and 9 months later, Jayde had created a story all by herself. I just planted the seeds, and Jayde, you did it.
Yeah. It was really great because I started making these comics when my mum passed away as a kind of way of channeling my own grief. So they're all kind of autobio comics and from my own experiences, and then it was really amazing to then kind of be commissioned then to make a picture book and the challenge of making it for a younger audience as well, which has been an amazing challenge. And yeah, the response has been amazing, hasn't it, with just adults and children alike, I think, that have really found some comfort in Mum's Jumper. And yeah, it's been quite an amazing experience, really.
And nearly forgot to mention this, you managed to write a graphic novel in the meantime as well, so you're pretty prolific. I'm ready. Will you ever be ready, Jayde? No, this is great. And because the book has been read by so many people already, we've nearly sold 5,000 copies in hardback, which means it's a bestseller in the English language market. We could reach out to our followers and say, do you have any questions about the book? And let me just read the first question, which is, let me just see, it's one for you, Jade. It's from Dominic Lee. He's a teacher at St. Stephen's in Lambeth in London. And so let me just read out the question. I'd be interested to know what Jade's writing process is. Do you create images and then write a story around it? Or does the story come to you and you create from that? He's got a second question, but let's just first address his first question, which is about your writing process.
Yeah, so it's quite organic, really. It's sort of they kind of do come together. I'd say with my comics, for sure, was a lot more of the writing came first, and then the images or the illustrations came afterwards. I think with Mum's Jumper, there was a little bit of it all kind of like gelling together. We'd had quite a few conversations about this idea of wanting it to be about grief, but also about it being about emotional growth, I guess, was the kind of like main thing. This idea that grief is such a big and all-encompassing thing, but how do we grow? And we talked a lot about flowers, we talked about daffodils, we talked about the change of seasons, and so a lot of that imagery kind of came into it organically whilst writing the story. So it's quite a nice little thing of coming together. But yeah, we had a lot of it kind of written, and then but a lot of the images just felt quite natural, and the kind of flow of the images throughout the book.
And we had an amazing editor, Victoria Miller, who had some fantastic feedback and some ideas. We also consulted with a children's psychologist through Victoria. And so let me just read you the second part of, it's actually more like a comment, but he said, I think that the symbolism of flowers in the book is very powerful and would make a great teaching point, as would the changing colors to reflect the mood. All too often, books dealing with grief and loss can be inaccessible to children with ASD traits, and this is a good way to make it tangible for them. Actually, maybe we should say, talk a little bit more about the flowers, and I'll just show you the cover so you can see how prominent the daffodils are. Can you tell us a little bit more about those daffodils? Why did you choose those?
Yes, the daffodils was I started making comics when my mum passed away, but my mum, her favourite flowers were daffodils, and for her it was kind of like the daffodils were the symbol of the winter being over, those kind of long dark nights are over. Seeing the daffodils is that little bit of optimism and this kind of, and then my mum, her birthday was in March and she also died in March, so for me the daffodils then became that symbol of like my mum's favourite flower, but then also for me a kind of I guess a memory of that time and stuff. But I also think that they are the symbol of spring and new beginnings and everything, and they're beautiful and bright and lovely, and I think they felt quite right, didn't they?
And they look just great on the cover there. They just brighten up this rather sad image. Well, let's talk about that later. So those are the daffodils. I think you've answered that question. The next question is from me. Sharon Porter asks, how do we best support those children who are new to English with us? I work in a school where many children arrive without any English. Any great picture or wordless books? This is a great question, and I'm just going to grab one of our books just to illustrate what I want to say. So wordless picture books are wonderful for children who don't speak English yet or have a limited knowledge of the language, but actually also for children who are native speakers of English and who feel blocked by seeing too much, overwhelmed or blocked by seeing too much text. And actually I experienced that with my youngest son, who just couldn't read when he was supposed to. So when you have a wordless picture book, like Fox and Goldfish, which is a book about this very unlikely friendship between fox and goldfish. And we find out on the first page that Fox finds out that goldfish is going to die. So it's a semi-wordless picture book. And he says, I can't let you go like that. We're just going to have some fun together. And then he takes Fox on a trip around the world, and they just climb mountains, and they go to America. They even go to the moon. They swim in the ocean, and eventually Fox has to let his friend go. And here we see him in the cemetery. So children who don't have a lot of words in English can tell their own story. And if they're from a different cultural background, having a story about two animals will also help, because they might celebrate grief or loss in a different way. And I just specifically say celebrate because in many cultures, death is something that is being celebrated with the whole community, and it's not something that is being hidden or being silenced by like it is here. So I would certainly go to those wordless picture books if you can, and discuss what children are feeling in their own limited vocabulary. So that was my question, my answer to Sharon's question. Tim Dunford has a question for you, Jade. Really interesting. People sometimes talk about closure with bereavement, which is something I don't think quite fits. What are your thoughts on this? Could you expand more on how you decided instead to approach the view of grief as this thing you grow into and live with? Why was this important to you?
That's a really good question. So yeah, I think we discussed we wanted it to be more about this idea of growth. I think the thing is that grief is so different for everyone. Everyone's, grief and death, is sadly inevitable, but we'll all experience it so differently. It's not as linear as, obviously there would be a lot of similar things that people will experience and everything, but I think everyone's kind of own journey with that is so different. So I think this idea of it's not just you get over it, or I didn't want, it's not something that you just get over. We really wanted to get the tone right for this book, because it was a very different experience for me going from making kind of comic style stuff to a children's book and getting the tone right and making this as accessible as possible for children and all ages. But this idea of the world, your grief doesn't just go away one day. Your grief is still there, and your grief is always going to maybe still be there. But the longer you go through life and the more experiences you have, your world kind of gets bigger around that, and you learn to live with your grief, and you learn to kind of like carry on that journey and carry on your life with the grief there. And there might be some days where you feel fine, and other days where a little something there, the smell of your mum, a jumper, the smell of something, hearing a song, anything might be that thing, just it's a big wave that just kind of like brings it all back. And it's, I think it's quite intangible. And so this idea of closure and then it just being over didn't sit right for me for this book. I wanted it to be honest.
But this seems to be a general misconception that grief is something that is gone after a year. A year is like, you can grieve for a year and you should really be over it. But everyone who's experienced loss knows that this is not true. Quite a few psychologists or bereavement counselors have developed theories about grief and how you grow into it. And I remember you told me at the very beginning about this jar. Can you remind me again?
So I actually, this was kind of a bit of an idea it kind of generated from this, but one of my friends who'd lost her dad actually around the same time that I'd lost my mum, she'd been going to bereavement bereavement counselling, and they explained it to her as a way of, there was 2 jars and there was a tennis ball, and then the tennis ball represented the grief, and they put the tennis ball in the small jar first, and this is what your grief is right now, and the jar represents your world, and then they put it in the larger jar, and this is what your grief will be in time. So it became this representation of your grief might stay the same size, but the kind of vessel that it lives within, so your world gets bigger, and that's definitely something that I completely brought that kind of, well, tried to bring that idea into Mum's Jumper, and this idea of
and I
growth.
think it's really important how you let the dad say. Some people say that grief gets smaller over time, but Dad says it's a little bit more complicated than that. He says the grief is like Mum's jumper. The jumper stays the same size, but I will eventually grow into it. That's really clever, and it's important for children and adults to know that. So while we're talking about your friend who lost her dad, I wanted to point out that Mum's Jumper was being kickstarted and then also sponsored by 2 bereavement charities, and one of them is Let's Talk About Loss. And we know them really well now. It's an amazing charity run by a young woman who lost her mum not so long ago. And together with a small team of volunteers, she created these, what would you call it, clubs, local clubs where young people under 30 come together to talk about their own loss. And I think you've joined, or you've gone to some of these meetings, and it's been really wonderful to meet others who are in the same situation and are happy to talk about the parent who they lost. And our other sponsor was Cruise Bereavement Care, who's a much bigger organization, who's also doing amazing things for bereaved people and families. Okay, so we're going to the 4th question from Megan Bamford, who's a teacher, and I'll be answering this question. Have you got any standout books or experiences that really helped you develop feel empathy? That's a really good question, and I think we could have a separate session to tackle this. But in the light of the recent events following the death of George Floyd, I just wanted to say something about my own experience with reading about colonization and the slavery that resulted from that. Being from Belgium, where we always focused very much on South Africa because there's a close connection there, and a lot on apartheid. So we knew a lot about that. But since I've never been to the States, and being from where I am, I didn't know much about what actually happened in America, and I didn't know much about segregation until I started reading Toni Morrison in my early 20s. And then we moved to Bristol 4 years ago, where I went to a meeting with Yasi, who wrote this amazing book, Homegoing, about the impact of slavery and slave trade on, I think, 12 generations. After this meeting, I started reading everything I could get my hand on, and that really helped me understand the impact of these horrid practices on so many people around the world. So this is a really good example, I think, of how these books and reading about African American families going through this, how this has helped me understand and feel empathy for them. So I now look at the process from a totally different angle than I would have maybe 30 years ago. So this shows, this is, of course, I'm an adult now, but we have lots of children's books as well. This is the book that I read just before lockdown, and that has now been read by my children, who are 11 and 13, written by Catherine Johnson, who's a British author. And it just takes us, the story starts in the United States, where a young boy, his mom and sister are being sold to a different master, and he's been told to go to the United Kingdom with his master, who's going to get married here, and to look after some precious pineapple plants. I won't tell you how the story ends. It's just really important, I think, that every primary school in the UK has a copy of this book and reads it to the children, maybe out loud, to understand and come to terms with the history. And this author is not blaming anyone. She's just putting things in perspective. And so these both books are just a really good illustration of how we can understand the lives of other people through literature, fiction and non-fiction. So that was my answer to Megan. I hope you're happy with it. But maybe we should have a separate session about this. The next is for you. It's from an illustrator, Lorraine Ansel. And she wants to know what your biggest ambition is going forward as an illustrator. It's a big question.
That is a big question. I think the last few years definitely have. So I graduated back in 2013. So I've been out of uni for quite a few years now, but the last few years I've been developing my comics more. I won the LCAF WeTransfer prize, which meant that I could create I'm Not Ready. I was commissioned by Book Island to make Mum's Jumper. And I think that my sort of illustration practice now, I'm definitely kind of going forwards into more of a story writing kind of way. So I'm hoping to make some more comics, more big comics, because that's quite fun to really get your teeth into. And we've also discussed potentially doing a sort of sequel, I guess, maybe for Mum's Jumper, but kind of exploring grief through the young girl at a later stage in her life, like as an adult, and how grief is different, how grief changes, and kind of exploring that. So that's really as well.
Yeah, so we actually we've realized that Mum's Jumper is actually being bought and read by many young, actually not only young women, by many women who've lost their mother a long time ago, sometimes 60 years ago, sometimes really recently. And the book has really resonated with them because they've never had a book that could have helped them when they needed it. So going through Mum's Jumper now actually still helps them, even though their mum has died so many years ago. So there's a huge need for these books. And I'm actually really glad to see that other publishers in the recent months have released books about grief, that it's becoming a more accessible topic for more people. And eventually, I think maybe in 5 years' time, it will be something that we can talk about more openly. So I'm really excited about our new projects, and we've given ourselves time until end of next year, right? So also because you've got lots of other projects going on, but you've done the groundwork thanks to all your comics. Mm-hmm. It's all there, really, isn't it? We could actually do like 5 more books about I mean, so please read I'm Not Ready. It's just amazing. We're giving away we're giving away 1 copy to one of the followers who sent in their questions. So Rich is actually the lucky one. So that was your ambition. The next question is from me again, from Phoebe Ledster, who's a teacher. It's a long question. I would love to hear your thoughts on where you think there is enough quality of books surrounding the topic of empathy that children can have access to. As a class teacher myself, I'm sometimes disheartened by the lack of these kinds of books I see available to children in school or other settings. Although there are some incredible books out there surrounding hard-hitting topics such as grief, pain, etc. for children, they're often not as easily accessible in comparison to other books. What are your thoughts on this? Well, I founded Book Island 8 years ago. And in those 8 years, I've seen very slow, but certain improvements. I feel that loads of other publishers are now understanding how important it is to publish books that instill empathy, that can instill empathy. Because actually something I've learned from Miranda McKerney, the founder of Empathy Lab, is that empathy can be learned. 10% of it is genetic, but the rest can be learned. So if you're not a very empathetic person, there's hope for you. Just read a lot of books and you'll get there. So I think I know a few people who might need to read a little bit more. So thinking about what's available, I would say, how about we have a look at the Read for Empathy collections, because they've already selected, I think it's 36 books this year, and the same amount last year, and they're selecting new books for next year. So we have a small collection of books that can help with empathy, and I think with the current events and everything that's happened this year, we publishers will just focus more on books that are really important, that can change the world. And I'm thinking about climate change. So many books have been published about climate change, and that's also empathy. Also political books. I've been thinking about publishing this book here, which is the title. It was originally written in Spanish, but I've got the Polish edition, and it says, "This is a dictatorship," and explains the concept of dictatorship. And look at the end papers. I think you know many of these guys. So through picture books, we can do so much. These books I think most publishers, the big publishers, we think it's really risky to publish something like that, but I think it's really important, and I will go ahead with it if I can. So Phoebe, I think there's hope. We are on the right track now, and most books about empathy are being published by smaller publishing houses like Book Island. Book Island is just me, and I know quite a few of my colleagues who are really interested in just helping this empathy revolution getting off the ground. So we'll get there eventually. We just need some time, and maybe some investors as well. All right, Jade, the next question is for you again, and it's 3 parts. This is a question from Rich Charlesworth. He was one of the judges for Empathy Lab, and so he helped select all the books in the collections this year. So the first question is really interesting. As much a tale of mum, I found the father figure in your book so deeply empathetic, caring and nurturing. His exploration of grief with his daughter is incredibly moving, usually bringing tears to my eyes, even on multiple reads. Was the process that you took to distill grief into this incredibly understandable, oh sorry, wrong, I misread that. What was the process that you took to distill grief into this incredibly understandable yet deeply affecting metaphor? Would you like to show some pages? Let me just start from the start. So here in the beginning, we can see how mom is in the hospital, and then dad takes the girl home. And then the next morning, there's a phone call where they find out that mom has died. See, yeah. And you can see how caring he is, and you know, he's just holding her at the funeral, and he's just such a lovely character. He's always there for her. He explains what she's going through. So look, here they're looking through mom's stuff, and they found the jumper, and that's where I suppose the healing starts.
Yeah, I guess that's such a nice such nice things to say. But I guess the dad was, in a way, I think the two characters complement each other quite well, because I think with the voice I wanted to get through with the girl, with the daughter, was this idea of when grief happens and it's so confusing and you don't understand, and all these feelings that she's feeling but she doesn't understand. And the dad, I feel like he's quite this, you know, obviously the supportive father figure and stuff, but he's also this I guess kind of a knowledge, kind of like this kind of like knowledge, like you know, this and yeah, this knowledge of explaining to her that this is what grief is, this is how it's going to feel, it's okay to feel like this, it's okay, you know, there's points where she feels angry because all the other kids have their mums that pick them up from school, and this kind of must be, you know, so confusing. I only know what it's like to lose my mum as an adult, and trying to kind of like channel that into a child. And we talked about how very complex emotions that come with it, but he kind of is the voice that says, you know, this is grief, this is okay for you to feel like this, and he becomes that kind of that support in that way. And I think they kind of, because, you know, when something like that happens, it is just like the carpet's just been pulled from under your feet and everything's just you know, and it's such a confusing time. And
yeah, many people have asked us who we would give this book to, and personally I think it should be read by everybody, not only children that are bereaved. I think we need to, and adults as well, we need to know about this. We need to, so that when it happens to us, we understand the anger, the frustration, the sadness, the loneliness. So ideally, the Mum's Jumper should be read in a safe environment, in a classroom, for instance, before something happens, before one of the parents gets sick, because we know that 1 in 30 children in primary school children in the UK will lose a parent every year. So every school in the UK deals with at least one loss a year, and sometimes it's more. You know, we've received so many tweets from teachers saying we've lost 2 parents in one classroom this year, and that's just terrible. But it's important that the children understand that, and that they're kind of prepared for later in life. Maybe their parents will die when they're in their 70s, but they might remember Mum's Jumper and say, remember that book with that girl with the daffodils? And yeah, that's exactly what the author wrote, that, you know, we were going to be feeling like this. So I don't think people or teachers should be afraid to share it with children, because I think it's a very safe book to read, and it's also hopeful, because towards the end, you know, you feel that things are getting better. She's growing into her jumper, and things are fine. Well, as fine as they can be, of course. So yes, it's really great that Rich focused on that father, because we haven't had much comments about it, but it's so true. Next question from Rich. Your use of color in your illustrations to accompany heavy themes contained in the text is refreshing. How did you create these, and what materials did you use?
Okay, so colours, I think there's definitely a pattern. There's a pattern, isn't there? We've got the blue at the beginning. We've got the bright yellow, and oh, there's a bookmark. Hey, the yellow, and then, you know, in these kind of earlier,
I'll let you show. Yeah.
Kind of parts, we have a lot more kind of subdued colours. We have a lot of blues, kind of pastel colours. Here's, you know, this is a funeral, so definitely used blue as the vehicle, I guess, to represent that sadness. But as we kind of develop through this, here I kind of used kind of grief as swimming as a metaphor. So I kind of I found it hard to concentrate at school. I used this kind of dark space as this kind of like all-encompassing grief. So a dark space began to follow me around. I found it hard to concentrate at school. The sounds and voices around me were distant and floaty. My body ached for days. How could I get to the shore? Dad told me this feeling is normal. It's called Grief, we were swimming to, and so it's kind of like this kind of darkness here, and then as we go through the book, we start to, she discovers her mom's jumper, and we start to kind of see this slightly more, that grief is still there and they're sharing it, but we start to, the seasons begin to change. We start to kind of like get these green colours, these brighter colours, and the change in the seasons, and the sunflowers start to grow, and this is kind of the emotional growth, but this is also the flowers are growing, the seasons are changing, things are getting brighter, and that's in the colours. But in regards to my actual process, I hand paint everything, so I paint everything in gouache paints, and then all the line work is done with black Indian ink, which I think gives it kind of quite a graphic kind of feeling. But yeah, the kind of that with the painting, I really like the organicness of the paintbrush, and I think it feels quite right to, it feels natural to me because I love painting, but also it feels quite flowing, and yeah, I guess it all feeds into that.
How do you choose the colors? Do you like paint straight away on the paper, or do you first make a rough, or?
I do. I'm quite a meticulous planner, actually. So as much as it might, people are like, oh, it's so loose, and it's maybe not so. But I actually draw everything out in pencil first, to get all the compositions right, and then I scan it into the computer and I colour it on Photoshop, so I have an idea of what colours go where. And then I take my pencil drawings and I put them on the light box, and then heavy cartridge paper over the top, and then I paint on top. So all in one layer on the top, on a separate bit of paper. But I think having that planning of, and it always looks different to the roughs anyway, because the colours are never quite the same. But I quite like that. I think the painting definitely gives across a nice, I think a nice.
I think it's worked really well. Really great. Fantastic.
That was the.
I think you've certainly answered the question. While we're talking about your process, let's say something quickly about the cover. Remember how we both immediately loved this image, and this is the image from one of the inside pages, so where she's at the funeral. So when I first saw this, I just said to Jay, this will be the cover. It's so powerful, and it just says it all. This is a book, it's going to be a book about grief. We didn't know what the title was going to be, but I wanted to be quite honest about the book and just show that it was going to be sad. But then we were actually nearly finished. The book was nearly ready, and then we were getting some feedback from local readers. Not maybe, I can't remember who it was exactly, who said, "Well, really, are you going to publish a book with such a sad cover? Are you sure about this?" And we both said yes. but then we started, asking more people, and we sent an email to 10 people working in publishing, who are nearly all British, and there was one, I remember, it was one Norwegian publisher, and we gave them the choice between two images. You created another one where the girl was lying in the field of flowers, and it was all looking really lovely, and then the current cover. And the Norwegian publisher really said, yes, of course, you have to have the sad cover, you have to be honest with your readers. And the 9 other people said, no, I think I would go ahead with the lovely image. And then we both felt it was wrong, and we just decided to go ahead with this image, and it's just been the right decision. Right?
100%. I think, yeah. We went through a few different versions, and I think for me, I just felt this was the more authentic, I guess, because I think I had a fear of because we had the little girl. She was lying down wearing the jumper. I think she was maybe reading. It was quite similar to the Empathy Lab illustration I made, actually, if anyone has seen that. And she's kind of like lying in the grass and she's sort of reading
Daffodils.
stuff. Yeah, daffodils around her. And then I thought,
No,
what
you
if
can't. No, you can't.
and someone picks it up and then, you know, mum dies on like the second page or something. I was like,
No.
I can't do that.
No, and we haven't had any comments from anyone saying, oh, that cover, it's just too sad.
Everyone's really liked it. I feel like and I feel like it stands out. I feel like it's
and also the American publisher Eerdmans, they've kept it, and the Taiwanese publisher is going to do the same. So I think we really, you got it right. It's a really very powerful and wonderful cover. Just one more question from Rich. It's about the healing effect of nature and flowers. So the healing effect of nature and flowers are prominent throughout the text. Oh yeah, was there a special significance of the daffodil for you? We've already actually answered that question. Someone else, or we just talked about it, didn't we? Yeah. So sorry, Rich. Just go back, rewind a bit, and you'll hear the answer. Our final question is from Alex Price, and it's a question for both of us, I think, but I can answer it. What age range would you recommend Mum's Jumper for? I use it across the board, as it's never too late for a picture book, but was wondering what your thoughts were. So Alex is a teacher, and I think she teaches older children. So whenever we publish a book, before we go to print, we actually already think about the recommended age range. And as a publisher, I'm always very ambitious. I always put the age range really low, because I believe that children can actually understand a lot more than what most adults think, even when it's a picture book about grief. So I put the age at 4 and older, because we both, Jayde and I, thought it was going to be really a book for children, and we didn't realize how much it would speak to older readers as well, to adult readers. So now I would say it's from age 4 to 100. Even a 90-year-old will love this book. It's just so honest and so powerful that it really will resonate with so many different ages and also cultures, I think. That's what I want to say about it. Did you want to add something about it, Jayde?
Well, I feel like, I feel just we definitely aimed it at a young audience, but I feel like the response has been incredible. I think the Kickstarter helped with that, actually. With the Kickstarter, it felt like there was, I mean, the support was amazing. I couldn't believe it, and I think it got a lot of people talking. That was really exciting. But yes, so many people. But you know, all ages have got in touch. You know, lots of people have got in touch, said, you know, I've got my mum's jumper, or my dad's jumper, my dad's football t-shirt, or whatever it is. I think anyone can, you know, really empathize, I guess, with those feelings, and it doesn't matter what age you are.
Yeah. And do you remember how we were at LCAF last year? And I met this Brazilian illustrator. She came to me and she said, I need a copy of this book, and I'm going to buy, I'm not ready to, where's Jayde? I need to have that too, that graphic novel too. And she told me about the glasses that she had of her dad, who died recently. And the glasses still had his fingerprints on them. And I just thought, wow, that's just so powerful as an image as well. And she was creating a lot of artwork to come to terms with her grief as well, wasn't she? But you know, this Kickstarter also helped us to bypass all the gatekeepers, because that's always a big issue in publishing, that you think as an illustrator, author, or a publisher, you think this is a really important book and everyone has to read it. But there's so many people between us and the reader who might think differently. Like some people might some librarians might think that Monster Emperor is a scary book and it should not be read by young children. Or a bookseller might be traumatized by his own loss, and he might not want that book in his bookshop. So doing the Kickstarter, we actually reached the people who really needed the book and really wanted to talk about it and who thought it was really important. And that's the great thing about crowdfunding, that you find your audience, and your audience will also tell you if the book should come to life or not, because it could have been a disaster too. You know, we could have had only 50 backers, but we had so many more from so many different countries. So it showed that grief is a topic that needs to be talked about in many, many, many countries. So as I said in the beginning, I really do think we're going to have many more language editions of your book, and it's just wonderful. And because it's written in English, it's of course accessible to so many people around the world anyway. And now with the American edition, we're going to reach so many more millions of readers. So yeah, thank you, Jayde, for making time to chat with me, and thank you everyone who's watching our Zoom chat. Before you go, I would love you to go and follow Jayde on Twitter and Instagram. She's Jayde Perkin, so Jayde Perkin, not Perkins. And also do visit Empathy Lab UK. They're Empathy Lab UK on Twitter, Instagram, and they've got their own Facebook page and a website too, with all the collections, all the Empathy Lab collections. And we're Book Island Books on Twitter and Book Island on Facebook. And do sign up for our newsletter. Oh, and visit Jayde's shop if you want to get hold of some of the last copies of the zines, the comics that I've shown you. And also, this is really special. I have 2 copies actually. So thank you, and yes, just keep following us, and eventually in September, October 2021, we should be able to show you the next book in the series. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye-bye.